Hey guys, welcome back to this week's SubQuest. Today we're going to take a little trip down memory lane. We're going to talk about some shows from the 90s growing up and what impact they've had and a little bit of a darker side to them. But we're going to be talking about Power Rangers. We've got some other things we're going to talk about as well. But we're going to dive right into it. I can remember as a kid, getting up every time a new episode was to come out and just be waiting. I absolutely loved the Power Rangers growing up, and I still to this day like the show. I like what it brings. It's just, it's cheesy, but it gets me. It gets my attention, and so I like it. Now, I know, Power Rangers is a used as source material, the American version anyway, from a show Super Sentai. Which that's fine. I mean, I'd like to watch Super Sentai. I just don't know anywhere that I can, which is no biggie. But back to the Power Ranger side of it, growing up with that show and what it means to me, um, I mean, it means a lot to me. That was part of my childhood, and just watching the different storylines and everything that takes place in that from start to end. But there is a darker side to that. Recently, we watched there's a show on HBO Max called Hollywood Demons, and it gives you a darker side of the Power Rangers. And in that, I mean, it is a heartbreaking story, because it takes you back to the early days from, with the producers and the struggles that everybody went through as far as the cast and crew, and what everything they went through with it. At one point in the story, they was talking about how, they was out in the desert, and one of the actors who was playing one of the putties, he basically had a heat stroke, and he was offered a small amount of money if somebody else was to put on the suit and finish out the scene. Well, they did apparently, and so from what I've heard and what I've seen on it, it is a tragic behind the scenes type story when it comes to Power Rangers. It's one of those where it doesn't necessarily ruin my childhood, but it does make me feel bad for those all involved with it. I've met some of the actors at different conventions. David Yost, I've met him before. A super nice guy, very nice guy. I love what he's done with, with his Netflix movie with the Power Rangers. It's very good. I recommend it to anybody if you're a fan. It's one of those that, yes, it did bring a tear to my eye because of the backstory with Trini in it and what's happened with that, um, and so on. I'm not going to try to spoil it or anything like that, but overall, I do highly recommend it. But I have met some of them, and you never know what's going on behind the scenes, and to hear and see what had happened, it is kind of heartbreaking to me. It doesn't necessarily ruin my childhood, but it does put it in a different perspective that, these actors was doing what they was doing, uh, to make a living, so to speak, but also to provide enjoyment for, kids that was enjoying the show. And so, it's one of those where I look back and I enjoy it quite a bit. And so, but it talks about the curse of the Red Ranger. Because whether or not there's a curse, I don't know. But there was several instances that involved Red Ranger, so to speak, and that tragic situations that seemed to befall that role, that casting. And so, one thing with that is that you know the Legend of the White Dragon is another one. That one, uh, has been in project development for oh years, I would say, and so it finally has been confirmed. It's been filmed. After two Kickstarters, it was finally completed. As far as met the goals, they filmed it before the passing of Jason David Frank, which is tragic in its own sense, because he loved the role, he loved his fans. And so I am looking forward to watching it when it does come out. Last I heard is that it is in a term called picture locked. and it's undergoing color correction and sounding, and that they hope to present the film to distributors within a couple of months, was the last I heard on it. And so I'm really looking forward to that one. Um, I feel that it's going to be good. I really do. With what I've seen in the past, the little clips and stuff before they filmed the movie. So I think it'll be good. But I mean, from my my perspective, Power Rangers in general, it got me on the edge of the seat. I love to see them team up. I love the different introductions of the Rangers in general, and to see this evolution of Rangers from the start to now, and the different stories that they're telling from being in space to Time Force to whatever it may be, it's really good. I like what they do with it. And so I'm really looking forward to that. I wish that there was a way, or if somebody knows of a way, that I could watch Super Sentai. I would really like to check it out, because Super Sentai was the source material for Power Rangers. From what I understand, anytime that you've seen them in the suits fighting, that was from Super Sentai. Now, I don't know how much of that to a degree, but outside of that, the regular teens, that was the American version. And so I really, really enjoyed that. I still to this day do. And so I think I'd like to check that out. And speaking of Power Rangers, if you're not reading, there's a comic book series called Power Rangers Prime. It's new. It's coming out. It's by Boom Studios. Number 5 just came out. And let me tell you, this comic book series is phenomenal. Like, it's really good. It's really well written. The art, the story, I'm really looking forward to it. One of the things that really caught my attention in it is that they introduced the VR Troopers into this universe of the Power Rangers. And, the VR Troopers, if you don't know, was another show that was in the 90s that was set up similar to Power Rangers. Okay, it had your 3 heroes, and they used virtual reality technology to fight both in the real world and in virtual worlds. And so they had, high tech armor, they had powers. The villain's name was Grimlord, and he had an army of mutants and robots. And so, it was one of those that combined American footage with Japanese footage, same as Power Rangers, and that it carried over that same thing with Ham Saban and their team. And so I really liked it. Now, I will say I didn't care for it as much as Power Rangers, but it wasn't a bad show. I thought it had a lot of potential. And so I really, really liked it. Another one that I thought was interesting, I think that it ended too soon, but the reason that it ended, I understand. It was called Beetleborgs. Big Bad Beetleborgs, was another show that was similar to Power Rangers. It was a quirky comedy of sorts. What it was is you had 3 kids that had stumbled into a haunted mansion, and they released a mischievous ghost named Flabber. Okay, and so he granted them a wish because of them releasing him. And they wanted to transform into their favorite comic book heroes, the Beetleborgs. And so in this, they was armed again with high-tech armor, weapons, you name it, they had it. They was all bug-themed powers, hence Beetleborgs. And so, but the downside to that is their wish did come true, but it also brought all the evil villains and monsters from the comics to life with it. And so it was a good little show. It was slapstick, it was spooky. Same concept as Power Rangers. You had your Zords, or in this case your Borgs, and so on. And so it was a good show. I thought it was interesting. I think it went too quick. But now I will say though, both the VR Troopers and Beetleborgs both had the same reasoning as to why they was canceled. The reason that they was canceled, from what I can find on it, says that Saban Entertainment which was the producers of it, had ran out of usable Japanese footage to adapt. And so they run out of material. And so they didn't want to do their own. And so they just ended it, you know, which is a downside because the shows had a lot of potentials. I thought that they was really good. I definitely enjoyed them. Again, not as much as Power Rangers, but that's the original for me. You know, that's what I grew up with, enjoying, loving. Still to this day, I do. And so it's just one of those that, unfortunately, because of the footage situation, you know, is basically just shut down. And so, but another one came out around the same time. Now, this one was definitely interesting. Like, I thought that this one was really good. I'm a little bit sad that it ended how it did, and because it was a step out by Saban Entertainment, is another one of Saban's, M. Saban. Um, it was an original fantasy series. It was set in you know, the Celtic land. It was Mystic Knights of Tirnanog. And so in this, you know, you had your group of heroes who had been chosen by Druid to wield magical armor and elemental powers, and they was battling Queen Maeve and her dark forces. And so this show was so interesting in the way they did it. You know, they was combining mythology, magic, monster battles, with the same spirit that the other '90s action shows had. It kind of reminded me of Avatar, The Last Airbender, but in a Power Ranger style format. You know, because each one had a different ability they would call upon. You know, you had fire, you had water, you had wind, you had earth, and so on. And so it was one of those that it definitely had potential. It got better as it went on, but it was cut short because of Saban Entertainment wanting to mainly funnel everything into Power Rangers, which I understand. I get that fully. You know, that was their bread and butter, or still is. Well, I think they sold out to Disney, but you know, that at the time that was their bread and butter, and so I get it. And I think there may have been some lack of ratings and viewership that was also, you know, put into that as well. There was plans, from what I was reading, for a second season called Mystic Knights Battle Thunder, but obviously with it getting scrapped, you know, it obviously didn't come about. I think that they said that they had redirected the funds to Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, which, I mean, great series. Another great series by the Power Rangers. You know, highly recommend it. And so, you know, but that's what we've got when it comes to the Power Ranger things. But I do have another one here. Now, this one, short-lived, but I thought with the crossovers that it had, it was really good. Now, the crossovers I know wouldn't save it. You know, it all comes down to its popularity and the ratings and everything. But it was Ninja Turtles, The Next Mutation. Now, I don't know if you've seen this or not. It was short-lived. I think it was 26 episodes, I think, in the first season, the only season. 26 or 21, somewhere around in there. But what it was is it was a spin-off from the original Turtle franchise, okay? You know, and you have your Turtles, you have Leo, Donnie, Michelangelo, Raphael, as they're continuing their battle. Now, this one, they did have Shredder in it, and so it's a continuation of it, but it also introduced a fifth turtle, and her name was Venus de Milo. And what it was is she brought, you know, she was from the mystical side. She was a shinobi, and so she brought that element to the team to add to it. And from the backstory, from what I understand, and I may be a little bit off on this, but from what I understand is that she was with them when they was dropped with the ooze, but apparently she had fell through the grates even more than they have, and somehow ended up in, I think it said Shanghai, and so that's where she had been at this whole time, and so she had been learning and growing and so forth, and so It was a neat show. I wouldn't say it was the best adaptation of anything, but it was definitely something else. I enjoyed it, but I do like slapstick, cheeky comedies and so forth of it. And so, but one memorable crossover I have at this same time is that during this show and Power Rangers in Space, they had a crossover. Okay, the episode was titled Shell Shock, and so this was in 1998. Whew, showing my age a little bit on that one. But what it was is that the turtles had been put under mind control from the villain from Power Rangers, Astronema, and so she basically tricked them into fighting the Rangers and so forth, and back and forth. The turtles was able to break free from the spell, joining forces with the Rangers, and to eventually take her down. I mean, the crossover itself is a nostalgic fan fiction. It blends martial arts, mutant charm, and intergalactic action into one show. And so it was one of those that I can definitely remember to this day, and it is rewatchable. I mean, I like it. I'll sit there and rewatch it, and I've recently started rewatching because of that show talking about the dark side of the Power Rangers. I have started rewatching the Power Rangers just because. Um, it's one of those. It didn't necessarily push me away, and I know we've talked about this earlier, but it didn't push me away, so to speak. But I want to know. I want to know more, and I wanted to see if I could see things. But I doubt that that I'll be able to see anything like that. But that's not the main reason I'm watching it. I'm just watching it because of the nostalgia trip it gives me. I enjoy things like that, and one of those shows, or that show in general. I mean, the movie itself. When I was growing up, we went to we went to the local drive-in theater that we have. Oh, I miss that place. I think it was recently reopened, but we went there every day one week, I think, because it was during summer. We was out of school, and we watched it. We went there every night, and it's one of those that I could sit down and watch it. Was the graphics at some points a little cheesy? Yeah, but at the time when this was out, it was awesome. I mean, I understand that to this day. It's still cheesy, but I'm going to sit down and watch it because I like it. It's one of those shows with Ivan Ooze and the Ninjettis, and it's cool. I wish for more of that. I think that they did have that in the show at one point, but I don't think it was very long lived that I can remember. But it's been a minute now since I've watched it, but it's something I'm definitely going to pick back up, and I may try to watch episode or two a day until I can get through it. Now I don't know where most of them is at. I know there's a YouTube channel, and then there's also there's some on Netflix. There's several seasons on Netflix, and so I want to try to do it in order just so I can see the evolution. I haven't seen them all. I'm not going to say that I have. I've seen quite a bit, but I haven't seen all of the different series, and so I'm definitely want to. And so that'll probably be something that I do. I'm going to sit down and just watch them in order the best that I can, and then we'll go from there. And we'll probably come back and address it as we go, and just see what we can get into on it. But yeah, that's what we've got this week. I know it's a little trip down nostalgia road, and just different things that make me smile a little bit. And Power Rangers is one of those. If you know, type things. And so, but we'll be back next week. We'll probably have our longer show back. So yeah, but y'all have a great day. I appreciate each and every one of y'all.